Today, I'm going to teach you the pattern recognition strategy. This strategy uses a weakness in how standardized tests are written. Good test writers pick their incorrect answers to be like the correct answer, but with slight differences. They do this to trick students who have a basic understanding of the concept, but don't fully understand it yet. However, this creates a weakness that we can exploit in the answer section. The weakness is that it is more likely that the correct answer is the one with the most similarities to the other answers. Alright, let's go through some examples of this strategy. Remember that we are looking for the most similarities between the answers of the questions. When I'm doing these examples, we're not even going to look at the question statement, we're just going to look straight at the answers to decide which one is the most likely to be correct. So number one, just looking at the answers, we can see that a lot of the numbers from the answer sheet are similar. So we see 3 4s, we see 3 10s, we see 2 6s. Because 4 and 10s are the most common, those are the ones we're going to look at specifically right now. And we see in the column labeled valence that there are 2 4s in it. And we see in the column labeled core inner, we see 2 10s in it. Because 4 and 10 are the most common, and there are 2 4s in the valence column and 2 10s in the core column, we're going to choose C as our answer because it has the most overlap between all the other answers. C is the correct answer for this question as well. Now we're going to go down to number 2, only looking at the answers. Right off the bat, we can see that to the very left of all the answers, there is, in parentheses, AR and KR. There is only one KR out of the 5 answers and 4 ARs. So we're going to cross out A and just focus on B through E from here on out. So we can see that every single one has 3D something in it. And we're going to look, and if you look closer, we can see that 3 of the 5 have 3D2 in it. So I would cross off C and E. Now it gets a little tricky here because 2 of the 5 have 4S in it, and 3 of the 5 have 3D something in it. Between B and D, I would go with B because 3 don't have the 4S, although D also makes a lot of sense. The correct answer for this one is D, but this does demonstrate that you will need to study for your test. You can't just use this strategy the whole way through. All right, we're going to look at some other examples that I'd like to point out. Now, number 8 is a lot like number 1, where we have there are 2 things that we need to pick out, and there are a lot of similarities. We see 3 RBs, we see 3 Os, we see 2 Is, and we see 2 LIs. The same way I would go with the 3 RBs and the 3 Os. Those are the most likely, and just like number 1, we see 2 RBs on the left side and 2 Os on the right side. So I would go with answer A because it has RB on the left and O on the right. Now, because it's an and, the formatting doesn't really matter too much, like which is on the left or right. We just do know that there are 3 RBs and 3 Os, and we want the one where they intersect because that's the most similarity between all the answers. and A is the correct answer for this one. We're going to move down to 9. 9's a little tricky. It's a lot like number 2, where we have a list. We see that every single one has 1s2, 2s2, and 2p6 in them. Moving on, we see that 4 out of the 5, all except for C, then go on to have 3s2 in them. So we're going to continue doing that, and we're going to cross off C as a eligible answer. And if you continue on, we see that 3 of the 4 remaining have 3p6, and 1 has 3p5. So it should be 3p6 as one of the as the correct answer somewhere. So it's either B, D, or E at this point. Now you might think to stop here, but we can keep going because 3 of the 5 have 3D something in them. So if you continue looking at the ones that have 3D in it, you see that 2 of the ones that have 3D have 3D10, both C and E. Because of this, I would go with E as the correct answer, which it is in this case, which is good. There are just a couple more examples that I'd like to go through, but if you feel like you have an understanding, feel free to click off. This one's a little different. It's a bunch of numbers. We see right off the bat 3 negatives and 2 positives. That would lead me to believe that the answer would be negative because there's the most similarity in negative answers. We also can see that A and E are opposites of each other, as well as B and D. So I would go with either A or B in this case. I would go with B because it's in between the different values. It's closer to the C value. It's closer to the center, and A and E seem to be a little farther out there. The correct answer is B in this case. So if you went with that, you'd get it right. But A is also a good answer. D and E also could make sense. Moving on. That looked like a good one. Yeah, number 15, we're going to look at it here. So right off the bat, we're looking again at the positive and negatives, and we see that 3 of them are positive and 2 are negative. So that would lead me to believe that the correct answer would be positive. We also see that 4 of the 5 have a times 10 to the 3 on the end, which would lead me to believe that the correct answer would have times 3 to the 10 on the end. And we also see that 3 of the 5 have 1.85 in them. So if you look at those 3 criteria, we see that D is the most logical answer. In this case, the correct answer is B, which it does have the times 3 to the 10. It does have the 1.85, but it is negative. So sometimes you get it wrong, and this is not a perfect strategy. I wouldn't expect it to be. If it was, I would never study for anything. Number 16, we're going to look at, again, it's a list of numbers. We see 4 right off the bat that are negative. We can also see that 4 of the 5 have decimal points. If you look at the end of them, you see that A has 0.4 on the end, B has 0.8 on the end, C has 0.6, and D has 0.8. Now, if you noticed that B and D both have a 0.8 on the end, that would lead me to think that 0.8 should be one of the right answers. It should have a 0.8. So negative and 0.8 are the 2 criteria we're looking at right now. But you can also notice that A, C, and D are all values in the hundreds. while E and B are not in the hundreds. So that would lead me to believe that it should have 0.8 at the end, it should be negative, and it should be in the hundreds. And the answer that I would suggest going with would be D in this case, and D is the correct answer. All right, we're going to look at number 19 now. So when it comes to numbers like this, it's really important to look at the first number and the last number. Those are a bit more important than the middle numbers. The middle numbers can have some sway, but not as much as the first and last ones. So you can see a 7 and a 7 in D and E, while the other ones aren't as consistent. And in the decimal place, you can see that there are 2 zeros and 2 0.8s. So both D and E are looking like the front runners here because they have those similarities with the other answers. Now, if you look at the middle one as well, the 1 in the middle of D is corresponding to the 1 in the middle of A, and the 9 in the middle of E corresponds to the 9 in the middle of B. So between D and E, either are pretty good choices. In cases like this, I tend to go with the one in the middle of the group, since E is the highest number in this list, and D is kind of more in the pack. I would go with D. The correct answer is actually E. So with those where you can't really get a definitive, it's kind of hard to tell which one to choose. And I wanted to show 20 just as kind of a example of how you can't really do this strategy doesn't work for all problems. These are just different chemicals, and you can't really find a similarity on which one to pick. I guess you could go into this one has H's and this one has C's, but I don't think that would really get you what you want. The correct answer in this one is E. It's a pretty big outlier, but when it comes to problems like this, basically all of the choices are the same probability. So when doing this whole test with the strategy, there were 12 problems that you could use this strategy on. And when I did it, I got 7 out of 12 correct, which is a really good number for just looking at the answers. So I'd suggest using this strategy. If it helps you, that's great. If you'd prefer to just, study for several hours so you don't have to, that's also great. Anyway, thanks for watching.